Forget Eve. What if the first woman created by God was not a submissive companion, but a powerful being who uttered his unutterable name, grew wings, and defied the Creator himself, becoming the queen of demons? This is the story of Lilith. We will delve into the ancient Mesopotamian roots of this figure, uncover the audacious rebellion in Eden that transformed her into a nocturnal killer of infants, and discover why today she has become an unexpected symbol of female power and freedom. Prepare to rethink everything you thought you knew about creation and the true role of women in the history of myths. Watch this video to the end. Thousands of years ago, when the first civilizations of the Middle East were just learning to read the stars and the whisper of the desert wind, and the shadows of night seemed alive, humanity lived in the embrace of powerful yet invisible forces. Ancient Mesopotamia, the cradle of Sumer, Akkad, Assyria, and Babylon, was a world where every inexplicable ailment, every infant death, every dried womb had its mystical cause. And often this cause was winged, invisible, and came with the wind or under the cover of darkness. It was in this world, steeped in fear of the unknown, that the first sparks of the figure who would, millennia later, become known as Lilith, were born. At that time, there was no Eve, no Garden of Eden, and certainly no audacious rebellion of the first woman. But there already existed beings who instilled terror and demanded appeasement. On Sumerian clay tablets, inscribed with cuneiform, among spells and hymns to the gods, mentions of wind and night demons first appear. And one of the most famous and sinister among them was Lilichu***. Imagine the dim light of torches casting whimsical shadows on house walls as mothers clutched their children tighter, fearing not so much thieves as invisible winged entities that crept through cracks in windows. Lilichu, or Lilu, as she was sometimes called, was not merely a spirit. She was a predator preying on the most vulnerable. Her sisters in darkness *** Ardat, Lily *** and *** Lamish to *** completed this pantheon of fear. Ardat Lily was often described as a maiden demon, unmarried, possibly even barren, who longed for male company and was believed to visit men in their sleep, causing nocturnal emissions and stealing their vital essence. She was a prototype of the succubus, but with a deeper, more sinister nuance. Lamish, too, however, was the most ruthless. Her depictions, found on ancient amulets, show a creature with a lioness's head, a donkey's body, birds' talons and wings, nursing pigs and dogs. She was not just associated with diseases, she was their embodiment. Lamish brought fever, paralysis, miscarriages. But her favored targets were, of course, infants and women in childbirth. She would enter homes, abducting infants directly from their mothers' wombs or suffocating them in their cradles, drinking their blood and devouring their flesh. This was not merely an allegory, it was a real, tangible fear that compelled people to hang protective amulets above cradles and recite special incantations. It was in this anxious, superstitious climate, where every rustle in the night could portend disaster, and invisible entities held power over life and death, that the image of Lilith began to take shape. She was not a single, clearly defined demon in those times. Rather, she was a compilation, a concentration of all these ancient fears, an embodiment of a destructive female force emerging from the darkness. The whisper of the wind that swept over the ruins of ancient cities didn't just carry sand. It seemed to carry stories of invisible threats, of demons that could deprive you of what was dearest. These pre-Jewish beliefs, passed down from generation to generation, prepared fertile ground for mythological transformation. The atmosphere of constant threat from invisible female entities associated with night, wind, barrenness, and mortal danger to children gradually shaped a collective subconscious ready to accept and develop the story of a powerful yet dangerous female demon. Thus, from the chaos of ancient fears, from the whisper of the desert wind, and the shadows of night, an archetype was born that was merely a precursor to the Lilith we know today. Many more centuries would pass before this dark energy, this primordial fear, would acquire a name and a story in Jewish texts, transforming from an amorphous demon into the first woman who dared to defy creation itself. It was in medieval Jewish texts, specifically the apocryphal alphabet of Ben Sira, written between the 8th and 10th centuries, that the ancient archetype acquired its definitive form and name, Lilith. Here, for the first time, she appears not as a nameless offspring of darkness, but as a being created equal to Adam. Unlike the familiar story of Eve's creation from a rib, this text relates that God, wishing to create a companion for man, took the very same single lump of clay from which Adam had been molded. From it he also formed Lilith. Both Adam and Lilith emerged from the same earth, from the same primordial substance, which, in Lilith's view, made them absolutely equal. This shared clay became the foundation of her future rebellion. However, Adam, accustomed to unconditional obedience to hierarchy, could not accept such a state of affairs. Disagreements flared up almost immediately, but the point of no return was reached, strangely enough, in the most intimate act, in bed. Adam insisted on his dominant position, demanding that Lilith always be beneath him. But Lilith, proud and aware of her equality, flatly refused. "We were both created from the earth," she asserted. "Why should I lie beneath you? I am your equal, and my position should be level with yours." This seemingly simple dispute about physical position was, in fact, the most profound challenge to the patriarchal order, to the established hierarchy of creation. Words escalated into shouts, tension mounted. Paradise, meant for harmony, shook with their discord. Unable to endure Adam's claims and seeing her right to equality trampled upon, Lilith did the unthinkable. She uttered the unutterable name of God, the Tetragrammaton, those sacred for letters whose pronunciation granted unimaginable power. And at that very moment, as if by magic, wings sprouted from her. A flash of light, an instant, and a silhouette filled to the brim with fury and determination, soared into the sky, forever leaving the Garden of Eden. She flew away towards the Red Sea, a place symbolizing exile and alienation, leaving Adam alone, stunned and enraged by her defiance. Enraged and grieved by Lilith's departure, God immediately sent 3 angels, Senoi, Sansanoi, and Semangeloth, with a single purpose, to bring her back to paradise. The angels caught up with Lilith by the shores of the Red Sea, but this was no longer the Lilith who had left Eden. Here, amidst the ancient desert winds and the whispers of demons, she had acquired a new essence. She had already consorted with unclean spirits and, according to legend, was daily giving birth to hundreds of demon children. The angels pleaded with her to return, reminding her of God's wrath and her destiny, but Lilith merely scoffed. "How can I return to Adam," she replied, "when I have already defiled myself by joining with demons? My true purpose now is to harm infants born of humans. I am a nocturnal entity, destined to bring nightmares and diseases." In retaliation for being pursued, for being forcibly urged to return, Lilith swore revenge. She declared that she would kill human infants, boys before they reached 8 days old, before they underwent the rite of circumcision, and girls before they reached 20 days. But in her words, there was also a strange glimmer of hope for humanity. She promised that she would spare those infants above whose cradle or house door amulets or scrolls bearing the names of the 3 angels sent after her Senoi, Sansanoi, Semangeloth were hung. Thus was born the ancient practice of protecting newborns from the demoness's nocturnal attacks. After her departure and definitive refusal to return, God created a new companion for Adam, Eve, but this time not from clay equal to hers, but from Adam's own rib, so as to guarantee her submission and dependence. Lilith, rejected and rejecting, transformed into something more than just an exile. She became the queen of demons, the consort of Samael himself, or, according to other versions, of other supreme entities of darkness. She is the progenitor of countless demonic creatures known as Lilin, succubi and incubi, who visits sleeping men and women, inducing erotic dreams and draining vital energy. In the mystical teachings of Kabbalah, especially in the Zohar, Lilith firmly rooted herself as one of the four mothers of demons associated with the dark, shadowy side of creation, the Qliphoth, and some even identify her with the tempting serpent in the Garden of Eden. Thus, Lilith, having emerged from the same clay as Adam, but refusing the role of a subordinate, became the first symbol of female autonomy and rebellion. Her story is not merely an ancient myth about a demon. It is a powerful narrative about the quest for equality, freedom of choice, and the price one must pay for defiance. In modern feminist interpretations, Lilith is often perceived as a heroine who rejected the patriarchal order, an embodiment of strength, independence, and a woman's right to self-determination. She is not merely an evil spirit, but the archetype of the rebel, one who dared to say no and forge her own destiny, even at the cost of exile and demonization. Her name, once a whisper of fear, today rings out as a manifesto of freedom. But her triumph, her manifesto of freedom, was a challenge, an unheard-of audacity to the heavenly order created on principles of harmony and submission. And this challenge could not go unanswered. Immediately, from the highest spheres, God sent three of his most majestic and powerful angels, whose names had been whispered for centuries in prayers and incantations, Senoi, Sansanoi, and Simangelof. Their mission was simple, yet doomed to fail, to return Lilith to Eden, to restore her to her appointed place. Their path lay across boundless expanses until their gaze settled upon the turbulent waters of the Red Sea, a place anciently shrouded in mysticism, a boundary between worlds. It was there, amidst the primordial chaos of waves and sand dunes, that they found her. But this was no longer the Lilith who had left Eden. Before them lay a sight capable of shaking even the unshakable souls of angels. She, once created from pure earth, was now surrounded by thousands of newborn demonic offspring, fruits of her defiled unions with incubi and succubi swarming around her. Every day, in this grim refuge, she gave birth to hundreds of these eerie creatures, and the air was saturated with the smell of sulfur, the cacophony of their hoarse cries, and her own insane laughter. The three angels, shining like beacons against this darkness, stood before her. Their voices, full of divine authority and sorrow, called out to her, offering forgiveness, a path back, a promise of peace, and return to Eden. Return, Lilith. God will forgive you if you submit. Your place is beside Adam, but her reply was sharp, like the crack of a whip, and her eyes burned with fury and irreconcilable pain. How can I return to Adam? She hissed, and her voice, once gentle, now rang with steel. My bed has been defiled, my body given to those you call demons. I am not who I was. My destiny has changed. Now I am the one who will harm your descendants. I will instill terror, take the lives of infants, avenge my exile, your persecution. At that moment, amidst the roar of waves and the screeching of demon offspring, Lilith, raising her hands to the blood-red sky, uttered her terrible oath, not merely words, but a ritual sealing her new, monstrous path. This was not only vengeance, but also the acceptance of her inescapable fate. She swore, I will torment the children of humans. Every male infant, not having reached 8 days from birth, until circumcision makes him part of your covenant, will be my victim. And every girl, not having lived 20 days, will be taken by me. The cruelty of this oath was horrifying, but Lilith also gave a promise so that her wrath would not be all-encompassing, to show that even in her darkness, there was a degree of rationality, or perhaps just a faint trace of her former essence. However, she added, and a certain grim triumph echoed in her voice, if I see an amulet or a scroll on which the names of those who came for me, Senoi Sansanoi Simangelof, are inscribed, I will spare the child. Your names shall become a shield. Thus was born the ancient belief and practice of creating protective amulets, which have survived to this day. With this oath, the world of Lilith and the world of Adam diverged forever. The void she left in Eden could not be tolerated. And so, to give Adam a companion, but a different kind of companion, God created Eve. Not from the same earth, like Lilith, not as an equal, not for rivalry, but from his own rib. From the very essence of his being, his flesh. This was a creation called to submission, to tenderness, to harmony, not to rebellion. Imagine this difference. On one side, the raging Red Sea, 3 majestic angels hovering over its tumultuous waters, Lilith surrounded by hundreds of repulsive offspring, her face distorted by wrath and demonic madness. And on the other, the soft light of Eden, the gentle, just-forming hand of Eve emerging from the rib of sleeping Adam, a symbol of a new, more yielding, yet equally significant life. 1. The embodiment of wild, untamed freedom. The other of softness and submission, destined for family creation. It was thus that, exiled and hardened, Lilith finally embraced her destiny and became the queen of demons, the consort of Samael, the mother of countless succubi and incubi. The Lilin, who to this day visit the sleeping, cause nocturnal emissions, steal vital energy, and induce nightmares. She is not merely a rebel, she is the embodiment of primordial fear before uncontrolled female power, before chaos that challenges order, before the nocturnal horror that lurks by the cradle. Her name, once a whisper of fear, then a manifesto of freedom, is now a mark of damnation and a symbol of that dark side of female energy that refused to be tamed. This untamed force did not vanish into thin air. It merely acquired a new, sinister embodiment. Crying out the unutterable name of the Lord, Lilith broke free from the bonds of Eden, refusing submission, and ascended towards the Red Sea. There, on the boundless, scorching shores where sand mixed with salt, she found no solace, but acquired a new, monstrous purpose. It was here, far from divine order and human morality, that Lilith made her choice. Instead of submission, she chose rebellion. Instead of a single partner, she chose legions. The Bible is silent about what happened after her departure, but the apocryphal text alphabet of Ben Sira, a medieval source, paints a gruesome picture. The angels Senoi, Sansanoi, and Samangeloth, sent by God with the aim of returning Lilith to Eden, found her not a repentant exile, but a progenitor by the Red Sea. In the embrace of demons, she was already daily giving birth to hundreds of repulsive creatures. They were her children, her army, her answer to rejection. And when the angels, full of hope for reconciliation, demanded her return, she merely laughed a chilling laugh, declaring that she had defiled herself forever and could no longer live with Adam. Her true purpose, she whispered, was to cause harm. And this oath became a curse. Boys under 8 days old, girls under 20 days, all of them could become her victims, unless they were protected by an amulet bearing the names of the 3 angels sent after her. Thus was born the Queen of Darkness, and her throne was carved from fear. And this throne, woven from nightmares and despair, Lilith occupied with unprecedented power. She was no longer just a rebel. She became a supreme demonic entity, mistress of the night and sovereign of those who prowl in darkness. Her name, Lilith, became synonymous with all nocturnal horrors. She, according to legends, became the consort of Samael, one of the most powerful and sinister supreme demons, and at times of other entities whose names are whispered with trepidation. Together they spawned an entire race of beings known as Lilin, succubus and incubus demons, who come to sleeping people in the guise of beautiful or seductive creatures, draining their vital forces and inducing sinful dreams. These progeny of Lilith became her eyes and hands in the human world, spreading fear and corrupting souls. But the image of Lilith is not limited to mere folk legends. In the mystical depths of Jewish Kabbalah, especially in the fundamental text Zohar, her figure acquires an even more sinister, cosmic significance. Here Lilith appears not merely as a demon, but as one of the 4 mothers of demons, whose existence is inextricably linked to the dark side of creation, the Qliphoth. These are invisible shells, or husks, that conceal divine light, being a source of evil and chaos. In this system, Lilith is not merely an enemy of humanity. She is a fundamental part of shadow metaphysics, a force opposite to divine order. Furthermore, some Kabbalistic interpretations even dare to identify her with the tempting serpent who seduced even the Garden of Eden, thus completing the circle of her vengeance and influence on the fate of humanity. For who, if not she, the first rejected, could harbor such deep malice towards the new Eve and everything associated with her? This image, deepened by mystical treatises, penetrated the most hidden corners of the human subconscious, giving rise to countless folk beliefs. Lilith became a nocturnal demon who not only abducts infants from cradles, leaving changelings in their place or inflicting deadly diseases, but also penetrates the dreams of men, causing nocturnal emissions, stealing their semen for her demonic births. She is that sinister phantom who bends over the sleeping, bringing nightmares, suffocation, sleep paralysis. Imagine her, Lilith seated on a throne made from the roots of the world tree, but twisted and blackened. Her eyes, two abyssal pools, her crown woven from shadows and forgotten oaths. Around her, a host of Lilin, her vile offspring, whispering their curses and temptations. Somewhere in the distance, in the human world, the cries of newborns are heard, interrupted by an ominous whisper. And a dark shadow belonging to Lilith bends over a cradle where a child peacefully sleeps, while outside the sounds of night are already heard, in which every rustle might be her approach. She is the embodiment of primordial fear before the unknown, before that which extends beyond understanding and control. And her throne, the throne of darkness, continues to stand, fed by the fears and sins of humanity. But what if the throne of darkness, seemingly forever occupied by this demonic queen, suddenly became empty? Or, even more incredibly, what if an entirely different entity took its place? Not one that whispers nightmares and feeds on fears, but one that now shouts of freedom and inspires resistance. For centuries, Lilith remained in the shadows, a gruesome figure from nightmares. Her image, rooted in ancient Mesopotamian myths where the demons Lilichu and Lamashtu brought illness and death to infants, was then cemented in Jewish tradition as the embodiment of primordial terror. Medieval texts, such as the alphabet of Ben Sira, depicted her as a rebellious first woman who left Eden to retaliate by attacking newborns. She was the quintessence of primordial terror before what was uncontrollable: female sexuality, insubordination, independence. Her name was associated with darkness, demons, and damnation, and her oath to kill infants, boys before circumcision, girls before 20 days, made her a symbol of the most depraved malice. She was a warning, a grim reminder of the consequences of defiance. But times change, and what once served to instill fear today acquires a completely different, powerful resonance. In an era of reinterpretation, when old dogmas are questioned, Lilith began her own resurgence, not in the guise of a demon, but in the role of a powerful symbol. She is a phoenix, risen from the ashes of patriarchal myths, burning away the shackles of fear and guilt to reveal an entirely different flame to the world, the flame of independence. In contemporary feminist discourse, Lilith has ceased to be a villain, transforming into a true icon. The very woman who, having been created by God from the same earth as Adam, refused to accept a subordinate position. We were both created from one earth. This proud defiance of hers, voiced thousands of years ago, today echoes in the hearts of those fighting for equality. She refused to lie beneath him, not acknowledging his superiority because their creation was equal. And when her demand for equality was rejected, she did not beg or concede. No, she uttered the unutterable name of God, spread her wings, a symbol of her newfound freedom, and flew away from Eden, away from Adam, away from the system that tried to break her. Even when God sent 3 angels after her, Senoi, Sansanoi, and Semangeloff, demanding her return, Lilith refused, declaring that her path was already different and she could not live with Adam after having embraced her true essence. This act of rebellion, originally interpreted as the greatest sin and curse, is now seen as the greatest manifestation of self-determination. Lilith, who preferred exile to submission, became the embodiment of female autonomy. She is the embodiment of the right to make one's own choice, even if that choice goes against accepted norms and expectations. She did not become a submissive Eve, created from Adam's rib for his convenience, to be his helpmate. She remained herself, at the cost of rejection and eternal damnation. And it is this uncompromising nature, this boundless yearning for freedom, that makes her so appealing to modern women. Today, Lilith is not just an ancient demon, the consort of Samael, the progenitor of the Lilin, inducing nightmares. She is a banner for those seeking liberation from stereotypes and limitations. She symbolizes the struggle against patriarchal violence, for the right to a voice, for bodily autonomy, for equal partnership. Her story, transformed from a parable of horror into a source of inspiration, speaks to the truth that real strength lies in an indomitable spirit, in the ability to say no to what attempts to suppress you. This is Lilith confidently walking the streets of modern cities, in the eyes of every woman who has realized her strength, her worth, her right to independence. Perhaps she wears not wings, but a proudly held head, not a demoness's crown, but the wreath of her own dignity. In every act of resistance, in every step towards equality, in every voice that refuses to be silenced, we see echoes of her ancient rebellion. Lilith no longer hides in the night to steal children or inflict nightmares. She has emerged into the light to illuminate the path for those who seek liberation, becoming a beacon for all who refuse to be secondary. She is a symbol that even the darkest and most frightening myths can be reinterpreted and acquire an entirely new meaning, providing strength and hope where once there was only fear. Lilith, the first and rejected, has now become an eternal reminder of the price of freedom and the unyielding power of the female spirit. Her story is not an end, but merely the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter about self-determination, equality, and true independence. The story of Lilith is not just a retelling of an ancient myth. It is a profound reflection on how humanity has perceived power, freedom, and self-determination throughout millennia. From the embodiment of primordial fear before uncontrolled female power to a shining symbol of independence, Lilith demonstrates that even the darkest narratives can be rewritten, reflecting the evolution of our consciousness. She is an eternal reminder that true strength often stems from refusing to submit, from the audacity to defy established dogmas. And if the shadow of the past can become a beacon for the future, what does that say about ourselves, about our own stories, and about the boundaries we are willing to cross? Where lies the line between rebellion and destruction, between self-determination and exile into infinity? We have told our story. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to our channel for new deep dives into the world of myths, philosophy, and the human soul, and like this video if the story of Lilith made you think. Until next time.